cancer-free from pancreatic cancer, but I'm on chemo. Thank you. Thank you. And if it hadn't been for the prayers and my dear friends, like my friend Judy, I wouldn't be here. So we weren't sure if I could come. We had to postpone it, one or two times. And Sharon is so wonderful. Give Sharon a big clap, everybody. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. I grew up down on the coast and started telling stories when I was about your age, because we lived in this creepy old house in New England that was 200 years old. I was convinced it was haunted by Mr. Tilley. Mr. Tilley had passed away downstairs, so I just knew he was the one. Opening the closet doors, the lights flashing. Of course, my brother Mackie made the most fun of me, and he was always jumping out trying to get me. I don't know if you got a brother, but he was really wild. Still is. And so I started writing down some of my stories. And I saw another haunted house, and that thought, I got a story for that. So I was only about 10 or 11 when I started that. But the first story I told was at Brownie Camp in front of the fireplace, the fire. And everybody just got quiet and listened, and I thought, this storytelling's pretty cool. So I started doing it at slumber parties everywhere. But I didn't start professionally till I went to work at the Greensboro Public Library. I fell in love in French class with my husband, Fred. We didn't get married for a few years, but I knew I wanted to stay here. So I was a librarian and went out telling stories to preschoolers, toddlers, and, well, on up to your age. And they would sit there and listen. Do you know how hard it is to get a 2-year-old to sit there and even look at you? So Joe, the man I worked with, my partner, started telling stories and reading books. So then I started getting jobs. Now, I always tell the kids, I do not get paid what those fabulous football guys get. I should get paid that, right? A couple million, but no, but just a little bit. So that's a little bit of my story. Fred passed away 4 years ago, so I've had to rethink and redo kind of my whole self. And you're part of that. This has meant I'll start crying. You don't know what this means for me to be here, actually being able to tell stories. And a big thank you to Judy for bringing me. She's so good about taking me places. Storytelling is as old as the world, but as fresh as the rain. With a story, you can be here or in outer space or anywhere. So if you're a believer, if you're a hoper, if you're a prayer, if you're a wisher, a liar, or a magic bean buyer, then come sit by my fire. For we've got flax golden tales to spin. Come right in. My daddy was in the Navy. He'd travel far off places, bring back treasures and stories. My favorite place to hear the stories was Bonfire on Topsail Island. Yeah, you could have them back then. And the whole family would go and we'd sit and hear his stories. And of course, the favorite of all of us was Blackbeard, because Blackbeard had actually been at Topsail Island. So join with me in a little tale about Blackbeard. Can you get your hands clapping and help me sing? Come on, I know you're tired from lunch, but wake it up. Yo-ho, up she rises, yo-ho, up she rises, yo-ho, up she rises early in the morning. Okay, everybody help me. Yo-ho, up she rises, yo-ho, up she rises, yo-ho, up she rises early in the morning. Now, Blackbeard was tall, handsome, and charming. He had so many girlfriends and a couple of wives in different places. He sailed on the Queen Anne's Revenge. He'd captured her, and he would go up and down the coast of North Carolina. They'd hide the Queen Anne's Revenge on the back of Topsail Island. You can go to that place. I'll take you. And the ship would rest, and they'd scrape the barnacles off, and then they'd be waiting. They'd send a little feller about your age, up to the tip top, and he'd have one of those spy glasses, and he'd be looking for the other ships. And then he'd say it, "Topsail ho!" He saw a big, rich ship coming. So the Queen Anne's Revenge would sail quietly out of that inlet and get out there and pow! He'd scare those poor people to death. He had 40 cannons. You only needed 2, but he had 40. They'd say, "Heave to, we're coming aboard." And the pirates would go swarming on board the ship. They'd be snatching all the gold, snatching all the silver, and kissing all the pretty girls. So after that, they would either let the ship go, or he'd keep it. He wanted to have a big flotilla. And the pirates would party, just like we're doing today. They'd be dividing the treasure, 1 for you, 2 for me. That was Blackbeard. So that night, after they were all asleep, Blackbeard was still awake. He'd creep down to one of those little boats that you go ashore in, and he'd go ashore right on Topsail Island. This is a true story, my darlings. And he would bury that treasure. No one knows where, but he did this over and over. Now, Blackbeard didn't get to be a pirate very long, but the story goes that the treasure is still there. Blackbeard went on to lose his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, in a terrible storm on a sandbar at Beaufort. Well, lo and behold, Hurricane Fran unearthed the ship right at the bottom of the bay. And they've been going down. They've been bringing up cannons. They've been bringing up dinner plates. They have not been bringing up any money or jewelry, which makes you wonder, right? What happened to the gold? Well, my daddy said it was probably all those girlfriends he had. He'd given lots of jewelry to all those wives and girlfriends. But he probably still had some gold hidden on Topsail Island. So when I was your age, we started walking the beach looking for that gold. We looked up in the sand dunes. You're not supposed to walk on them now. But beware, if you decide to come and look for Blackbeard's treasure, whatever you do, don't stay after dark and don't go alone, because Blackbeard is said to still be there in spirit, guarding his treasure. And he's a little bit lonely, so he would love to have you for company. Everybody help me say, yo-ho, up she rises, yo-ho, up she rises, yo-ho, up she rises early in the morning. And that's in my 3rd book, Pirates and Ghosts of the Carolinas. I got to write my books just about 12 years ago, and it's been great because I feel like my stories are going to stay on past me, past us. I thought about it, and I told Sharon I'd tell some Southern tales, but I got to tell you an Irish one, right? I mean, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. Now, there once was a very lovely lady, and she was married to a nice, nice man. They lived in a small cottage off of the Wear, and they worked very hard in the garden and worked very hard everywhere, except he got lazier and lazier. He would lay on the settee and make his poor wife go out and do the work. Some of y'all know about that, right? Well, one day she said, "You have got to start helping me. Get off of the couch and settee, whatever they called it, and get out there in the garden." Well, he went out, but he was not happy. He was working on the potato patch. And it was close to St. Patrick's Day, and he thought, I'm going to start searching. If I can find a leprechaun, that means I can make him give me a wish. So that's just what he did. He hid behind a bush, and lo and behold, a wee man with a green hat a green vest and green shoes, probably green underwear too. And he was singing, la, 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 give me back me tail, oh, la, 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 la. And that's when our friend jumped down and grabbed. I grabbed myself. Grabbed our leprechaun. And so it was that the leprechaun was holding like this, let me go, let me go. Said, I won't let you go until you give me a wish. Well, the leprechaun did not like the sounds of that, and so sorry, we don't want the books to get wet. Oh, good. Oh, thank you. Sharon, have you got a napkin or paper towel or something? See, I love these three-acting things. So the leprechaun said, all right, me boyo, I'll give you one wish. And you'd better make it good, because it could come true. So he thought, and he thought, and he thought, and finally, oh, thank you so much, dear. What's your name?
Ed.
Give Ed a big clap, everybody. He's just such a gentleman. Now, I might have to do a discount for these books. But I didn't get your microphone wet, Charlie. Thank you. So he was thinking, what should I ask? What should I ask? I don't know. And then he thought of it. I'm so sick of these potatoes that I wish I had a giant potato. Then I wouldn't have to work in the potato patch. Are you sure? Said the leprechaun. Yes, I am very sure, he said. So just like that, he let him go, and the leprechaun was gone. And he looked over, and there was the biggest potato he'd ever seen. My gosh, y'all, it was laying across the road. It was so big. Oh, my gracious, he was so excited. He thought, we can eat forever. I don't have to go in the garden again. So he ran in the house and he told his wife. He thought she'd be thrilled. She was not thrilled, because you know what happened. It was so big, it was blocking the road. Nobody could get by. I mean, you, sir, if you wanted to bring your cart to market, you couldn't get by. We couldn't get by. Thank you, darlings. We couldn't get by to go to church. We couldn't get by to see our friends. She was mad. She said, I can't believe you asked for a stupid wish like this. I swear, me darling, if I wasn't in love with you, I'd be leaving you. You got to get out there and do something. Well, he got out there, and all there were screaming folks. And then his wife got an idea. She said, I'm going to share our good fortune. So she cut off a big chunk, and she gave it to Ed. Then she cut off another big chunk and gave it to Sharon's whole family. And the potato got littler and littler, but it was still so big. It was covering the whole road. It stayed there so long. It caused so much trouble. And it had those little black things on it. You know what those little black things like potatoes get when they're old? They call them tater eyes. I do not know why they call it an eye. You can't see out of an eyeball on a potato. Everybody knows that. But they call them eyes. So she had the idea, cut one off, and another one, another one, another one, until she had a big pile. And she made a sign, and it said, 1 gold coin for a bag of magic potato seeds. Well, everybody looked at that big potato. They looked at the seeds. They had to get some right away. I mean, Pastor Craig even would have gotten some. They were buying them like crazy. And she'd cut them off and cut them off. Soon the potato was down to normal size. She'd been cooking French fries, baked potatoes, potato pancakes, potato latkes, whatever. So now she could rest. And now she had a whole pile of gold coins. So they lived very happily ever after. But he was still not allowed to be lazy. And that's the story, me darlings, of the magic potato. Thank you, thank you. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do, 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 give me back me tail, oh. He lived in the woods, and he liked it that way. He had 3 dogs, and they were the best company. Every day he'd go out hunting for his lunch or dinner. One day there was nothing. He could find nothing anywhere. So he was about to go home when he saw it. There, hanging out of a hole in a tree, was a long, furry tail. He thought, well, that tail's just waiting for me. I could take it home. So he went up and he grabbed the tail and he pulled and he couldn't get it. He pulled again and he still couldn't get it. And finally, boing, he pulled it and he fell back on the ground. The dogs were barking. He was barking. He didn't know what had happened. So he stuffed it in his rucksack and went on back to his cabin. But in the distance he heard, diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do, 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 give me back me tail-o. Well, he was scared, so he ran all the way. When he got back to the house, he was so hungry, his tummy was touching his backbone. You ever been that hungry? Not today, but yeah. And he got a great big pot in front of the fire of water, and he threw in a few little herbs, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a couple of taters, there's that tater again, and carrots and all the good stuff, and then the tail. Now, ma'am, I could tell, looking at you, that you would not cook a tail, okay, maybe an oxtail. You would not cook a tail for dinner. I mean, would you? I mean, Pastor, would you cook a tail for dinner? No, of course not. Even if they were on sale half price at Fresh Market, you would not cook a tail. And it cooked and it simmered and it smelled pretty good. He cooked it for hours, and then that night he had a nice big steaming hot bowl for him and the dogs. And he was having a nice feeling. He went on to bed, covered up with his quilts. You know, when you don't have electricity, you go to bed early. And that's when he heard it. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do, 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 give me back me tail-o. He sat straight up in the bed. He thought, that tail belonged to something, and it's going to come and get me. Oh, no, he thought, I'm here alone. So he put the big board that blocked the door, and then he pushed the bureau up against the door so nothing could open that door. And he got back in his bed. But he heard it again. Can you help me this time? Diddly-dee. I don't hear y'all. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do, 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 give me back me tail-o. And it was closer. And at that point, the wind started whirling, whirling, whirling around that cabin. He got under the bed, under the quilt. He got the dogs under there with him, and he just was real quiet. But then, it was loud. It was right outside his door. Come on. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do, diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do, diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do. Give me back my tail-o. He knew he was safe. Nothing could get in that door. And then all of a sudden, there was a loud whoosh of wind and a ruff of sound. And that door flew open with a bang. He was shivering under the bed. He couldn't see. Something came a-whirling in. Something was about to eat him up, but changed its mind, went over to the pot, and in that hot, boiling water, reached in and grabbed out that tail and put it right where it belonged. And then disappeared. So whatever you do, don't be going into the woods and stealing anybody's tail, because it could be scary. Thank you. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do. Come on. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do. Diddly-dee-and-die-dee-do. Give me back me tail-o. That's also a Southern folk tale, as well as a Scottish, Irish, and I don't know what. So they've got Talos in every country, I suppose. Well, how much time do we have left, Sharon? I could keep these folks till midnight. They're so wonderful.
You have about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Already? Sharon?
15.
Okay, 15. Are you, nobody's asleep yet, ma'am. Are you awake? I saw that yawn. Are you okay? All right. I got to decide what. Told Judy I had to tell my signature story last, so, yeah, I got to tell that last, and I told Blackbeard, so I guess we'll have to have another wee ghost story. Is that okay? Just a itty-bitty one. Now, Mr. Johnson rode into town, and he was so handsome. Charles, he was almost, get off your phone. He was almost as handsome as you, Charles. See, I caught him. Did you notice that? Just teasing, Charles. Go ahead and call your other girlfriend. Or text her. And he was so handsome. He rode into town on a horse. The war had been terrible for that poor town on the coast of North Carolina. Not many handsome men were around, and everybody was dirt poor. Everybody except for Stella's family. They owned the one store in town. They had a big mansion and an estate out in the countryside. Well, when Stella saw that handsome gentleman riding into town on that horse, whoop, she fell in love. She went all out. She dressed up, she spiffed up, she smelled good, and she started going after that Mr. What did I tell you his name was? Mr. Johnson. Okay, what's your name? You get an A+. Dan. Okay, thank you, Dan. Mr. Johnson. Well, lo and behold, Mr. Johnson had started courting the pretty school teacher, Miss Sharon, and they were in love. He'd sit on the porch with her and swing back and forth, and everybody knew they were going to get married, except for Stella. Stella started working real hard, getting Mr. Johnson away from poor Sharon. Her daddy had all that money. Some folks said her daddy probably paid money for Mr. Johnson to take her off his hands. Because did I tell you that Stella was the meanest and the awfulest person? I mean, she would not even say, hello, how are you? She was so awful that dogs would cross the street so they wouldn't get petted by her. I mean, she was just terrible and ugly. Ooh, poor child was ugly. You can't help being ugly, but she didn't make it any better. Well, dears, I hate to tell you what happened. You know what happened. That money won out, and poor Miss Sharon, everybody say, aw. She was sitting by herself when that Mr. Johnson married that ugly, ugly Stella. And then Daddy gave her a nice big house and peanut plantation. They raised a lot of peanuts down there back then. Well, everybody said, this is going to mean Stella is going to be very, very sweet. Guess what? She got worse. She was so cranky, she wouldn't even go into town. I mean, people would say, don't talk to Stella. She's in a real bad mood. But then they had the honeymoon. Now, I can see you gentlemen smiling. You remember your honeymoon, right? Even though it was 50 years ago. Okay, maybe 30, maybe 40, maybe, you know. Well, the honeymoon. She was that ugly Stella in there combing her hair. And all of a sudden, she started feeling bad. Well, she got in that big old canopy bed, and she got sicker and sicker and sicker. And the doctor said, Stella, you got to stop being so ugly. If you don't be so ugly, you're going to get iller. Well, she did. She got so ill that, I hate to tell you, friends, she died. Everybody say, oh, no. It was sad. I mean, when anybody dies, even somebody as bad as Stella. So poor Mr. Johnson was just a-sitting there by himself and worrying and thinking. And on her last breath, he held Stella's hand and he said, honey, are you okay? That was a dumb question, right? And she said, whatever you do, oh, wait a minute, Sharon, can I hold your hand, baby, so it looks real? She said, whatever you do, please bury me in the middle of the peanut field with a big, nice tombstone. And then she was gone. Thank you, Sharon. Good girl. Well, what do you think he did? Gentlemen, would you have planted her in the middle of your best peanut field? Would you have gotten her one of those great big tombstones? Now be careful, because like me, you're probably already buying and looking at tombstones at Westminster. No, you wouldn't. So he buried her behind the house with this wee little board of a cross. Didn't look like nothing. And you know what he did next? That very night he went to Sharon's house. And they had a big time, and they got married. They were having their honeymoon. Same house. Big mistake. They were at the house. She was in the bedroom combing her long, pretty hair. Uh-oh. All of a sudden, the rocking chair in the corner started going back and forth. Everybody say, uh-oh. And then she got a feeling that the room was so cold, she was a-shivering. So she pulls down the big canopy bedspread, and screams bloody murder, because there in the middle of the bed was the gold locket that Stella had been buried with. Everybody say, ah. He ran out of there as fast as he could, because at that point, dirt started flying against the house. He and Sharon looked out. Dirt coming out of the ground, hitting the house. Thud, thud, thud. Come on, help me, everybody. Thud, thud, thud. He looked out, and oh, my Lord, have mercy. The dirt was flying right out of Stella's grave. Ah! They had to get out of that house really fast. I mean, that horse had to carry them really, really fast. He got out of there as fast as he could. And you know what he did the next day, right? Got a nice, big, fancy tombstone. Got the pastor to come and have a nice, sweet funeral. And big letters, Stella, R.I.P. Rest in peace. And as far as I know, she still is. You can drive down those country roads going to my house to see my mama and see those little graveyards. You know the ones I'm talking about, the family ones. Don't go near them, because one of them could have Stella rest in peace. Thank y'all. Okay, I'm going to try not to spill this water. I hate to say it, my preciouses, it's time to go. Now, Miss Judy, you're supposed to be taking pictures. Uh-oh, she was so engrossed in Stella, she forgot. Charles, did you take any pictures? I took one or two. One or two? That Charles, he is a cutie pie, isn't he? Sharon, you are a lucky woman.
I want to say thank you so much.
Oh, wait a minute. I got to tell my signature story.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Can I have 2 more minutes, Sharon? I got to tell you this one. This one is on the Discovery Channel. You better say, ooh. The Discovery Channel heard that this was my specialty, and they were investigating whether the story was true. I'm not going to tell you what the story is yet. And they came to my house. Lord, my husband had a fit cleaning that house up. I mean, he drove me crazy. He took everything out of the living room so the camera crew could have moved. As they came to our house, I mean, the Discovery Channel, and they filmed, and the show is called Monsters and Mysteries, and it's still running the reruns. Did I get any money? No. Did I look great? Yeah. I did, Judy. Tell him, right? Okay, Judy, I'm going to pose. We're going to get the wheelchair out of the way, Sharon. If I need it, you pull it up here real fast, okay? Just kidding. Okay, so this is my signature story, and I dedicate it to my husband, Fred. Fred passed 4 years ago when COVID started, and he was always my roadie. He would follow me everywhere, haul the equipment, set up the speakers, be charming to the ladies. He was great. But now I'm dedicating that to him. And of course, my mama. You would have loved Mama. Wouldn't they have loved Mama, Judy? Mama lived in 96. She still looked like a gorgeous model. People told her she looked like Elizabeth Taylor. She was so pretty. She didn't have purple eyes, though. And Mama was always dressed just like me, glitter, jewelry. And she would come anywhere to hear me tell stories. She drove across North Carolina many a time at all the libraries I'd go to and the big festivals. And I'd say, "This is my mama, everybody." And the kids would all look at her and she'd love it. So this is for you, Mama, and Fred. In the pines, where the sun never shines, and the cold and the chilly wind blows. True love, don't you lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? It was raining so hard that he couldn't see. His windshield wipers were old, and back in those days you didn't have good ones. He was going slow because he was on that road from Greensboro to Jamestown. You know where I mean, where that big concrete railroad bridge is. He had almost reached the railroad bridge when he saw, to his amazing eyes, there was somebody standing by the road in this terrible storm. So he slowed down and he pulled over. He could see that it was a young lady in a long dress. He pulled over and got out of the car and said, "Can I help you?" But when he got close to her, he could see the dress was tattered and sticks and dirt. Her hair was tangled with leaves, and he just was so sad looking. "Can I help you? Can I take you somewhere?" She didn't say a word. She just stood there with her cold, icy blue eyes staring at him. He said, "All right, I could take you home. I got my car." She didn't say a word. She just glided silently over to his car. He quick opened the door, the back door, and she was so cold when she went past it, he shivered. He said, "I tell you what, I'm going to let you have my grandma's quilt to warm you up." So he put the pretty quilt over her lap and went around the car. She had still said nothing. He started driving real slow under the railroad bridge. Yep, you could still see it. Yep, you can go under it. And he slowed down. He said, "Where do you want me to take you?" She didn't say a word. So he asked again, Is your house near here?" She didn't say a word, but she lifted one skeletal, bony finger and pointed. And he looked up ahead, and he could see up there on the Jamestown Road a house, way up on the hill, tiny trees everywhere. So he stopped the car, and he pulled in the driveway, but the driveway was blocked. There were trees and rocks like it hadn't been used in a long time. So he says, "We're going to have to walk. I'll be with you. I'll help you." So he got out of the car to help her walk up the hill. And when he got around to the back of the car, he opened the door and, he screamed bloody murder because the back seat was empty. Come on. He whirled around looking for her. He didn't know what had happened. He looked this way, he looked that way. He called, "Hello?" Didn't know her name, of course. And looked everywhere. He couldn't even see in the woods. It was so dark and foggy and rainy. So he started clambering up that driveway, stepping over the logs and hollering, and finally got to the top, to the little porch and the little light. She wasn't there. He knocked on the door, kind of quiet, and an older lady came to the door, fixing her shawl, and looked at him with sad, sad eyes. He said, "Ma'am, I picked up someone, and I think they wanted to come here, but they haven't gotten up here yet, have they?" The woman just shook her head and cried tears. She said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for trying to bring my Lydia home." You see, years ago, she died in a car wreck on the curve. And ever since then, she's been trying to get home. Well, he didn't believe her. He said, "No, she was in the back seat of my car. You must be confused." The woman shook her head and she held up a picture for him. And it was the girl that had been in his car. He said, "That's her." He said, "That's my Lydia, 25 years ago." He was so upset and so beside himself, he still couldn't hardly believe her that she said, "Okay, I'll take you out to the graveyard." Now, back in those days, you could have your own sweet family little graveyard by the house. And that's where they went. Walked the brick in the dark, opened the gate. Everybody help me. And walked in. And he looked at the graves one by one. Those gravestones were sad and quiet. And then he saw the one that said, Lydia. Lydia. It was true. How could it be true, he thought. He whirled around, and even a grown man, he was in tears too, and he hung on to the little grandma and said, I just can't believe it. She was there in my car. And it was then that he turned one last time, and he saw, draped over the tombstone, was his grandma's quilt. In the pines, where the sun never shines, and the cold and the chilly wind blow. True love, don't you lie to me. Tell me, where did you sleep last night? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Feels so good to tell stories. I'm going to start crying. You are wonderful. Give yourselves a big clap. And you can go to my website and see other pictures and other places. It's Folkteller. You can remember that, folkteller.com. And I guess I'm going to have to sell some at a discount, my 3 books. The first one was Piedmont Ghost. The second one is a cookbook with food stories and recipes from my church. And the third one is Pirates of the Coast. And Sharon, I would like to present you with one of the pirate books, because I hear that y'all like pirates at your house. Even that sweet Charlie. Read it to him too. And Judy, did you get a good picture?
Oh, I think I did. One more pose.
Okay, one more pose. Did I look okay? I haven't looked this good, friends, in 5 months. I am not lying to you. Thank you so much for letting me get out the glitter. Okay, I'm lying. I did go Halloween to the graveyard. Thank you so much for letting me get all this out. And have a wonderful rest of the day, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. It was delightful.
Yep.
I think we're still, does anyone want to have their picture made with her?
Yes. Oh, do.
Sloan, come up here. I want to make your picture with her.
Oh, you are. Everybody can hear. Goodbye. Thanks.
I will like to make one announcement. Next month, on the 3rd Tuesday, we will meet and have a
Is that your
representative
phone?
from Senior Services come and speak to us of all the services
Yeah,
that are
make sure I
available
got
to
a
us
good
in this area.
So glad you came. Oh, Charles, you're going to take another one? Wait a minute, Charles. Take one with Sharon. Get over here, baby.